Tall, Dark, and Deadly by MadiKade, narrated by Rose Red, featuring Dark Wolf. It all started last week. My bestie and I had decided to go clubbing that night. She had finally got rid of that creep that she had been seeing for almost 2 months. The idea was to have a couple of drinks and maybe flirt with some hot guys. I admit, though, that I might have had a little more in mind because I was enduring one of the longest, driest spells that I had experienced since college. But I wanted Helen to have a good time and forget that loser. We had gotten out of the cab around 10. The Havana Club was the hottest spot this side of the valley. On a Friday night, the only way in the door was to look like you belonged there. So we had to dress to kill. Helen paid the cabbie, and I noted to myself that I would get the tab. Neither one of us liked to drink that much, and if the night went well enough, I would be picking up the return trip as well, to only be fair. The music from inside the club was already loud enough for us to walk to the beat as we made our way up to the bouncer. I tousled my hair to the side as we walked, and the big, balding, sweaty mess of a man smiled at us. Then, much to the chagrin of the other patrons waiting in line, he moved the barricade and waved us in. I could hear moans and groans from over the sound of the music, and it made me squeal to myself as he opened the door for us. It was going to be a great night, I thought. It was warm inside, shaking off the night's chill from outside as we walked into the lobby. We could feel the heat radiating from all the other bodies within the club dancing. As we moved across the lobby, the music continued to get louder. The bass line was vibrating me to the core. It felt good, really good. We managed to find an empty table and sat down. We only had a moment to survey the scene before a friendly waiter walked up to us with a pearly white smile and asked for our order. He was dressed in black slacks and a skin-tight tee that showed off pecs for miles. He was good looking, but he wasn't really my type. So I smiled at him and ordered a fuzzy navel as I pulled out my card and handed it to him. Then Helen ordered an amaretto sour. While we waited for our drinks, scoped out all the eye candy, and pointed them out to each other, we giggled with each other as we pointed out traits and rating them on the doable scale. When our drinks arrived, we both took a tasting sip and nodded approvingly at the waiter. After a few more minutes of rating the best looking of the crowd, Helen gave me the look that it was time to hit the floor. Just then, a tall man, the most attractive man I had ever seen, dressed in what appeared to be Armani, and he walked up to our table.
Excuse me, ladies, but I believe you have managed to occupy my table,
He said in a voice that had swooned me before I even realized that he had spoken. His smile seemed to catch the flashing lights from the dance floor, and his eyes seemed to sparkle like freshly polished emeralds. He had long locks of perfectly trimmed hair that were tied neatly behind his head, but was pulled forward to rest on his right shoulder for effect. I stammered for my voice. Looking over at Helen, I could tell that she had been affected by him in a similar fashion. Looking up at the tall man, I finally managed, I'm sorry, sir. We were just getting up," as I began feeling for my clutch on the table. His smile got wider, and he placed his hand on mine, stopping its movement. His touch made my skin tingle all the way up my arm, clouding my brain from rational thought, and my voice left me once again. I couldn't take my eyes off of him, and before I knew it, he was sitting in the chair adjacent to me.
Nonsense, my lady. But perhaps, if I may be so bold, I could buy you ladies a drink and sit with you for a spell.
His smile continuing to mesmerize me. I could only nod in agreement, lifting his hand off mine to signal the waiter to our table. With his attention elsewhere, his spell over me weakened just enough that I could look over to Helen. She looked at him completely smitten. I'd never seen her look at anyone like that, and for a moment I was worried that I might be looking at him the same way. Using my newfound freedom, I reached under the table to touch her side, signaling to her that we should go freshen up. I had to touch her 3 times before she looked at me. Just then, the strange, beautiful man brought his full attention back to us.
My name is Armand.
He stated with a coolness that sent shivers up my spine, and his smile returned to its mesmerizing state. The rest of the night seemed to be hazy. All I can really remember was looking at his beautiful face, perfectly kissable lips, speaking to us, his strong neckline moving with his voice. And soon, even I forgot the music that was blaring in my ears. The vibrations even seemed in time with what he said. To my dismay, I woke up the next morning in my bed completely devoid of clothing. I quickly searched the bed to make sure that I was the only one in it. Oh, thank God for small favors. I slowly sat up in bed, and my head started to throb. Oh, how much had I drank last night? I moved to get up, standing on very weak legs. My body felt as though I had been going at it all night, but I couldn't remember any of it. I staggered over to my chest of drawers, retrieving a nightshirt to cover myself. Then I made my way to the bathroom. I stopped at the mirror to inspect the damage. I stared at what I saw in shock. I looked like hell. The whites of my eyes were so red that for a moment I thought I had somehow broken a blood vessel in them. My skin was pale as a ghost. What the hell happened last night? I started to head out, but then I got sick and had to get close and personal with the porcelain god. After cleaning myself up and swearing that I would never do that again, I made my way out of the bedroom to check on Helen. Making my way down the hall to her bedroom, only by the fact that I used the walls to stabilize myself, I knocked on the door. There was no answer, so I knocked again. Helen? Still no answer. I slowly opened the door, afraid that our friend might be in there with her still. I peeked my head in to see that she was in her bed, alone, thankfully. I walked in and sat on the bed next to her. "Hey, sis, you okay?" I asked. She didn't respond. "Helen?" Fear began swelling in my throat as I shook her. She didn't respond as I screamed her name. I ripped the blankets away from her, and I found her in the same state that I had been not too long ago. Lacking clothing, her pale skin made her look like a corpse on a morgue table. I could tell that she was breathing, but it was very shallow. I had to get the paramedics here. I bolted up from her bed and had to stop for a moment to keep from passing out. Then I moved as fast as my legs would take me back to my bedroom so I could get my cell phone. It felt like an eternity. That hallway had never felt so long since we rented the place. Tears welling in my eyes, I spoke with the 911 operator. When the paramedics finally arrived, they tried to revive her. The lead paramedic told me that it was probably some drug-induced coma, but the doctors would be able to tell for certain once they got test results. He looked at me accusingly and continued that I should get looked at as well. I politely declined, because I was worried about Helen, and asked if I could ride with her to the hospital. After hours of sitting in the waiting room, the police came to file a report. I had recounted what I remembered of the night, and they said that we may have been slipped a date rape drug. Still in shock, I agreed to having a rape kit performed. Helen was to have one done on her, too. That was the most violating thing that I've ever experienced. Worst of all, they found nothing on either of us. I sat in Helen's room, curled up in a chair next to her bed. The doctors were unable to get her to respond to any treatments. When the test came back completely clean, the doctors had no explanation for her coma. My only comfort was the sound of the monitors making sure that she was still alive. I listened in horror as the police told me that they really couldn't do anything at this point because there was no hard evidence of a crime being committed. Best case, they could bring in anyone that fit the description for questioning, but if they didn't admit anything, then they couldn't detain them. With that, I was given a card to call if anything changed, and they left. It was getting dark when Helen's mother showed up. She gave me the third degree about what happened the night before and blamed me for what happened to her daughter. I had to get out of there. I felt like crap and I just wanted to sleep and make this horrible day go away. I called for a cab in the lobby of the hospital. When I got home, I just went to bed. The next morning I woke up even more tired when I had gone to sleep. From my bed I called in sick to work. When I got up and looked in the mirror, my skin was even worse than before. But what happened next scared me to the core. I thought, just for a split second, out of the corner of my eye, I saw Armand standing in my bedroom. I quickly turned to face him, but he was gone. I carefully peeked around the bathroom door to see the rest of my empty room. The sudden rush of adrenaline propelled me into the kitchen so I could grab the biggest knife I could find, and I searched the rest of the apartment and found nothing. I must be losing my mind, I thought to myself. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor to find out what was wrong with me. When I got there, my doctor ordered a slew of tests. I found myself on the table as she examined. I'm really at a loss here. I've never seen anything like it. I hope you don't mind, but I've called the CDC. I just want to rule out any possibility of infectious disease, she said with a concerned look on her face. An hour later, 2 men in white environmental suits came into the treatment room with all sorts of unfamiliar test equipment. I was poked, prodded, and God knows what else for over an hour. When all was said and done, they still knew nothing, but at least they couldn't catch whatever I had. I decided to make a trip to the hospital to check on Helen. She was still in a coma, but they said that she still had brain activity, so they listed her as in stable condition. When I walked into her room, the nurse was just finishing her vitals, and her mother was not there. I sat on the bed next to her and took her hand into mine. Tears in my eyes, I pleaded with her to wake up. When her mother walked in, she smelt as if she had just rolled in an ashtray. The smell turned my stomach. I quickly stood from the bed and wiped my eyes dry. She looked at me for a moment, then she apologized for our accusations the night before. I didn't say anything to her and just sat in the chair on the other side of the room. We sat in silence for long moments, both of us staring at Helen, willing her to consciousness. All of a sudden, the monitors attached to Helen went crazy. Fear welled up in my throat as my bestie began convulsing. I bolted up and smashed the help button when Helen's mother and I flanking her bed. Then Helen's eyes opened wide, contorting her face into a look of pure terror. As the nurses and doctors converged into the room, Helen's mother and I were quickly ushered out. As the door closed behind them, Helen screamed, a blood-curdling shriek. Then she was gone. The doctors tried to revive her for what seemed like eternity. Helen's mother fell into a chair outside the room, sobbing. I was beside myself with grief, staggering back from the door. I thought I saw him in the corner of my eye again, But once again, when I looked, he was gone. I felt like I was suffocating and I needed to get out of there. That night, I cried myself to sleep. When the nightmares came, I was horrified by the sight of Armand standing over Helen, laughing maniacally. I laid in the hospital bed next to her with my hands and feet bound to the bed. I struggled helplessly to get away, but the bindings held me.
Not very strong, that one.
With a menacing chuckle,
Nothing more than a snack, really.
he said, smiling, revealing sharp, jagged teeth.
You, on the other hand,
He paused for effect.
much stronger, more of a banquet, and all for me.
I began to cry as fear knotted in my throat, as I swallowed a boulder and continued to struggle against my bindings. He chuckled again.
Yes, I think there shall be no need for guises anymore. You should know the truth before I dine.
He smiled menacingly as he began slowly stalking toward me.
You see, when I saw the two of you together, I knew that you would be much more satisfying.
I tried to scream, but my voice would not come out. He laughed again as he licked his lips.
Yes, go ahead, my sweet little morsel. The more you fight, the more you struggle, the sweeter you shall taste to me.
He ran a finger down my naked side, sending shivers through my entire body. He bent over the bed so that I could feel his hot breath on my neck.
You see, my little delight, most incubi can only feed on sexual energy, leaving their prey happily exhausted, but relatively unharmed.
Licking my earlobe with a long, wet tongue that both left me excited and horrified at the same time. I cringed, trying to shrink away from him.
I, on the other hand,
His breath was hot in my ear.
can feed on so much more.
I shook violently, tears streaming down my face, leaving my hair matted to the bed.
Yes, I will have all of you. But first, I shall dine on your most intense emotions.
He said with another menacing chuckle. I begged him to stop, to just leave me alone, but he persisted to torture me, bringing me to the brink of madness. When I awoke the next morning, I was yet again devoid of clothing. I felt sicker and immediately lurched for the bathroom. The blood color was now bleeding into my irises, and I looked like I had lost 20 pounds, so I called in sick again. Every night, nightmares starring Armand. Each night, new horrors, and each morning to find even more horrors. Each morning, losing more of myself. The next morning, I had lost all feeling to my extremities. The morning after that, my hair had begun to fall out. This morning, I woke up to a voicemail from my boss, telling me not to worry about coming in again. I cried inconsolably, but no sound came out of my mouth. I had lost my voice. I'm writing this so that I can let anyone that will hear this to believe me when I say that there is a real danger out there. I can't take any more. Ladies, if you see a perfect man that you can't seem to take your eyes off of, if he can make your skin tingle with a mere touch, you are in real danger. And if you are given even the slightest of chances, you need to run. Run away as fast as you can, or you might suffer a fate more horrible than death itself. The water in my bathtub is becoming a pretty crimson, like the color of my eyes. One last time to go to sleep. I'm ready, Armand.
Hello, listeners. Dark Wolf here. I hope you enjoyed our little chilling story today. And if you did, please give it a like and share it with your friends. I wanted to get this video out a little earlier in the week, but as Rose said, things have been pretty crazy around here. So as it stands right now, we would like to get about 3 videos a week out. A little more if we can manage it, but that's the current goal. I want to give a special thanks to MadiKade for letting us read her story today. If you would like Rose or I to read something, please feel free to contact us via Facebook, Twitter, or the email that will be provided in the description. Or you can just leave a comment, whichever you like. And as always, subscribe for updates because we're always looking for new pack members. I'd also like to give thanks to Kevin Macleod for providing the music for this feature. He can be found at incompetech.com. Finally, remember, as you are listening to us, someone else may be listening to you.